Okay, well, it's 10 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Before we hand it over to our presenters and Mr. Brian Soule, I just have housekeeping procedures I'd like to go over. First of all, we are recording this session, so if you ever need to refer back to it or share it with some of your colleagues who couldn't make it this morning, it will be up on our YouTube channel later this week. If everyone can remain on mute while you're not speaking, that would be wonderful. So there isn't any background noise while the present going on. Video is 100% optional, but when questions come in, sometimes it's nice to see your face with the name. There's one button I'd like you all to avoid hitting. It's at the bottom of your screen. It's a rectangle with an up arrow. That's your share screen button. Please do not click that, as that will interrupt the presentation. If and when you have questions, you can either use the raise hand feature or put those into the chat, and I will prompt the presenters when appropriate. If you have any technical issues, please put those into the chat, and I'll do my best to help you through those. Just be aware that most of the time, technical issues stem from your own Wi-Fi connection. And finally, if anyone is dialed in via telephone today, please send me an email at rey@pjhq.com. That way we'll make sure you get your PDR credits for this morning. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Brian Soule.
Matt, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for being here on no matter where you are, if you're calling in from the States, a frigid Wednesday morning. We are so excited to have our friends from the Professional Ski Instructors of America and American Association of Snowboard Instructors. That's a mouthful. PSIA Aussie. Joining us today, and I just want to give a bit of a background of how we got to today and why we're so excited for this. So Penn State, many years ago, started a partnership with PSIA Aussie to begin to build, and I'm going to put it in golf terms, what would essentially be a certification program, if we were doing it for golf instructors, that's fully online, so that their ski and snowboard instructors, cross country, all of them, could enroll in our courses and work through their certification with their organization. And so we've had just a fruitful relationship with these gentlemen who are here today. And in our work with them, we've had the opportunity to learn from each other. It just so happens that I oversee our online learning at Penn State for my department. It just so happens that I'm a golf professional, PGA professional, and I started seeing a lot of the amazing parallels between our industries and thought there's some great potential for collaboration between our two associations and for learning between us. So I thought that a lot of the stuff that I've learned through working with these gentlemen and that Eric Hanley has learned through working with this group is incredibly applicable to the golf industry. So hopefully on a Wednesday morning, you can learn a little bit something about how they train their teachers. And we'll talk a little bit about how that compares and contrasts with how we train our teachers in the golf industry. So Dave Schuling is the National Director of Education, Professional Development, and Credentialing. He's calling in from Colorado. Angelo Ross is the Education Development Manager. And Angelo, you're calling in from Western PA, correct? Great. And so I'm going to hand it over to these guys. They're going to present for a little bit. And our goal today is to have this be interactive. Certainly raise your hand and unmute if you have any questions. I think we're going to have some opportunity for breakout discussions towards the end as well. So Dave and Angelo, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see everybody. We're just as excited, I think, as you all to kick off or continue collaborating and learning from each other. Go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. You should see Mr. Woods. Excellent. All right. We had a little technical difficulty with audio, but we will roll. You're just going to have to channel your own kind of ambient chill vibes while you watch some video here. Any avid skiers in the house today? I know, Brian, I know there's a few.
Pete Allison.
We'll go into breakout rooms a little bit later, and we'll get into total swing and turn analysis for both of these folks. This is some training slalom footage of Michaela back in 2016. All right. Let's see. There we go. Awesome. I'll kick things off. Angela and I will kind of bounce some things back and forth, but had some time to poke through the PGA website and look at vision mission. This is known as our overarching end. We're an association and governed by policy governance, and so basically this is everything that we do should roll up to this statement that our members receive innovative, inspirational, and accessible professional development to enhance their careers and leadership potential within the snow sports industry. I compared that to the PGA's vision statement, and I just love the first statement. You're just at the heart of golf, and that's pretty much what we do to support our membership as well. But you know, some other key words there: inspiring, very similar, helping them to realize their potential and derive maximum enjoyment at whatever level that they play. So Brian mentioned that back when we got to know Pete Allison and Peter Newman at the time, the head of the department for the Recreation Park and Tourism Management within Penn State, and right around 2016, around this time, our leaders got together, and literally since 1961, when our national association was formed, it was really the goal of the founding group to create consistency across our very large country, within our different regions, territorial regions within with ski and snowboard. Well, at the time, only ski instructor associations that were popping up, and they were based on, a lot of it came from folks that were coming over from Europe after World War II. Lots of different techniques, depending on what school you were in. You were either under the Austrian system or French system or Swiss system, and there was an effort in '61 to create what is the American teaching system, so guests could have consistency across the country. And interestingly enough, we've been striving for real, true consistency ever since. And so in 2016, our leaders got together and said, let's see if we can really tackle that. And we dug in at that point in time. And like I said, the timing was great, because that is when I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Pete Allison at the time. And as some of you know, he had come over from the University of Edinburgh, where he had worked with the British Association of Snow Sports Instructors to align their credentials to university credits, and based off of a academic framework in Europe, which we don't quite have here in the US. But we started chatting about what could be, how could we create a system where maybe other universities would eventually copy? And the very first time I was able to visit the Penn State campus and we started talking about this, that Golf Teaching and Research Center is a photo from my phone that's still on my phone. And that was one of the first things that caught my eye. And I just immediately started asking questions about the parallels between the PGM program and, what we could do within snow sports. We have a lot of similarities where there is a performance aspect to both of our sports, to be able to do the sport and be competent in the sport. But then how do we run the business side, and how do we teach the sport, and how do we get people excited about learning? And so that's kind of when we kicked things off and started on this journey where we've been building and working through really revamping everything that we've done. So this is the piece that when we met with Brian and Eric and started chatting, we walked through what's known as the Learning Connection. Around 2015, we presented this at Interski, which is a every 4 years international snow sports education conference, and presented this to the world. Basically, what we did was we were working as a team to develop what our entire methodology would look like, and we really started with, first of all, in the effort of tackling this consistency issue. This is a shout out to all the volunteer task force and subject matter experts that we work with, and Angela and I work with day in and day out to get this done. It's no easy task to do something of this nature, and we rely on just the heart and soul of a lot of our members and our team members. But we basically asked ourselves, or asked our task forces and all of our various groups, what is it that makes a great snow sports instructor? Or even better, what is it that creates great learning, that sparks learning and interest for people to want to continue that? And so that was the catalyst around rethinking and rebuilding our entire system. And so the Learning Connection, and I'm going to ask Angelo to help me speak through some of these things. We'll bounce it back and forth a little bit. The Learning Connection is quite simple as a framework. We asked a question about what is great snow sports instruction, and we looked at the ability to interact, interpersonal skills, aka people skills, the ability to create learning or teaching with learning as the outcome, and certainly all the technical aspects of the sport, the ability to do it, the ability to analyze it, and the ability to convey that information in such a way, in a technical manner, and understand the sport and be able to say it back very simply to learners out there on the snow. And so if we break down each one of these, we refer to the bullet points here as fundamentals of each of these skill set areas. I'll pause for a second and kick it to Angelo to help me walk through the people skills fundamentals.
Great to be here with everybody today. Thanks for having us. So we believe that this is foundational among our foundational things. Our ability to connect with folks who come to us for help, for support, to learn, deserve to be met where they are on their terms. And as we started to dissect the job of being a snow sports instructor, this, in my mind, rose to the top as the real pivot point. And there's sayings out there: nobody cares how hot your feet are, nobody cares how great you ski if you don't connect with them and teach them. So this is really foundational, and where a lot of our technical fundamentals, we say, there's not necessarily an order to how the body operates to affect the ski or the snowboarder or what have you, because those movements have to happen in a harmonious way with each other all the time. The people skills and the teaching skills might be a little bit different. So my eye is always drawn in this one to the third bullet point down, which is really about knowing yourself. um, the better we are at that, the more we can plan ahead for things that might get in the way of a student's goal, and they allow us to anticipate situations that arise. So the more you know yourself, the more you can plan ahead for that. But by doing that, it paves the way for the rest, in my mind. And these are really foundational to connecting with people. Know yourself so that you can know others. And by engaging in effective two-way communication helps to establish trust with that person. And once that trust is established, of course, it has to be maintained. But that's a pivotal moment in working with somebody collaboratively in a teaching scenario. So these get a lot of shine these days for us. We bring these to the top a lot because we realize how important it is not only to connect with people in that time and place in that particular lesson, but to get them to come back to be participants and enthusiasts the same way we are.
I've got a few graphics later on in the deck here that speak to some of the service models that the PGA references, and there's a particular piece that caught my eye related to interpersonal skills. One way that we break this down, paraphrase it if you will, very simply to kind of remember it and have it sink in, is you can think of it as trust, communication, me, and you, and all four of those basic fundamentals. And when we've started to revamp all of our certification standards, we recognize that people skills and teaching skills, as we segue over to teaching skills, really are the glue across all the disciplines. So they are literally identical, from ski to snowboard to telemark to cross country to all of our adaptive sports, as well as we offer credentials in children's specialist or child development and also freestyle specialist. So here you see the fundamentals for teaching skills, and back to Angelo to speak on that.
Thanks, Dave. So a lot of our conversation recently has been contrasting what can become typical in a teaching situation, which is presenting at somebody, versus really teaching them, collaborating with, working with throughout the whole process. So we look at these teaching skills fundamentals as real-time, present tense, and ongoing throughout a really throughout a learning environment based in best practices. So collaboration on goals at the outset of the lesson, maybe the long-term goal, leads into constant collaboration throughout on what could and often do become short-term goals along the way to get to the ultimate goal. And then we believe it's the teacher's responsibility to manage those things in the second bullet point. The amount and type of information or content given, which activities are selected on target with what the goals are, and then things like terrain selection and pacing to accommodate where they are in the learning process and skill development. We'll talk about our beliefs about skill development a little bit later, but essentially we believe people pass through three phases of skill development in the learning journey, which are a cognitive phase, which requires a lot of thought and thinking. So in those situations, it's probably good to back off the terrain, get onto something a little bit more manageable, take the other variables out of play, manage activities in a way that they're sequential and build upon each other, and then gives those folks the opportunity to pass through the other phases of learning, which are or skill development rather. An associative phase where they start to tie a little bit of what they're being taught into what they already know, becomes a little bit easier. Practice makes more better. And then ultimately to the autonomous phase where they can exercise a lot of these skills without a whole lot of executive functioning, and they can fly their flag. They can put their stamp on it their way, which is foundational to the American teaching system of skiing, and a bit different from what we came from in our history. We believe in self-expression as a as a skier or a rider in the States. But of course, we want that to be grounded in solid movement fundamentals for safety and everything else. But moving on through the bullet points, we talked quite a bit about the three terms in the third bullet point, which we accept as technical terms: play, experimentation, and exploration. Best practices in learning, because this is how humans operate. This is what we do. And you can go from the example from the infant. What's an infant do as it develops into a fully functioning independent human being? We start to explore our environment. We stick things in our mouths. We reach out and touch things. That eventually gives rise to a little bit more mobile exploration, if you will, crawling around the environment. And then we start to manipulate objects, play with them. This is just naturally what we do, and we don't have to be taught those things. And then think ahead into the early elementary school years, when you get into formal experimentation, variables, independent variables, and that sort of targeted problem-solving thinking. We seem to develop that capacity somewhere in the early to mid elementary age years. And because those things happen naturally in our species, we believe they're best practices in learning. So we try to embrace and create those types of learning environments in our lessons. And moving down through the fundamentals, we really believe that a learner's ability to look back, to reflect, to debrief, and identify physical sensations that might be new through the learning, and certainly impacts on the performance of the skis or the snowboard, and take that with them. And there's an element of self-coaching in there. A responsibility of a great teacher is to be able to figure out a student in the time allotted in such a way that you can have them identify a new sensation with a new performance skill, but certainly ownership won't be there at that point. So, it becomes homework, and it's something they can take with them to practice until they come back the next time. And moving down through, we believe in constantly adapting what we do to meet where students are, which is another present tense, real-time activity. It requires diligence, objective observation, constant communication. So back to those people skills, there's certainly a lot of overlap between teaching and people skills that we tap into. And then lastly, and obviously an overarching concept of managing not only physical risk, which is probably the one that stands out more than the other, but emotional risk. Skiing and riding can be intimidating. There are a lot of factors from the environment to the conditions to performance anxiety, all the things. So we're very cognizant of managing emotional risk as well. And we believe that these fundamentals taken as a whole reflect best practices in teaching.
Speaking to the risk piece too, it can also be really thrilling. And how do we manage that? That's why we didn't just mention that it's all about being safe on the mountain, because there's a managing risk is a balance between the thrill of doing the sport, as well as some of the things that might make you anxious or nervous about the sport as well. So that balance between that, a lot of systems, even still to this day, are still very linear, progression based. You do this and then you do this, and it doesn't matter who the student is, whether they could skip a few steps. There's still quite a few countries and systems out there that were that way. The learning connection has the student in the middle, and that's something that the American teaching system has always hung its hat on for a long time. And Angela mentioned it. It's about making sure that you're working with the person in front of you and continually collaborating and then adapting to the changing needs. And in a mountain outside dynamic environment, skiing as an open skill sport, those motivations change in a heartbeat. And if you don't adapt in the continually adapt to the changing needs of the learner, then you've missed something. And so we see it, and I think you probably all see it as well. When someone's new to teaching, they're armed with so much information, and they have the progression in their mind, and they forget about the person that's right there or the people that are right there, and they just kind of walk through the steps. But as you get more skillful, and that's what the fundamentals speak to, you then can apply and be more creative in how you interact with the students. I'll speak to the technical skills because this is the one that I think maybe there's some parallels between our two different associations, but this is the stuff that gets our members really excited. The technical aspects, the doing it, the analyzing it, maybe not necessarily the digging into all the theory and understanding it, but certainly we all love to do it. And that each one of our specific disciplines has technical fundamentals that relate to the mechanics of the sport. They're all actually very similar. Some of the differences between alpine and snowboarding are a bit obvious in how you're mounted to the equipment, whether it's sideways on a snowboard. But one main difference in a fundamental is the ability to manipulate the board because you have 2 feet attached to it. So there's a fundamental related to twist, the ability to twist the board along its longitudinal axis, which it's more difficult to do that on skis. Cross-country skiing and telemark skiing both have their heels unattached, which adds a lead change, as it's known, into the mix. And how does lead change apply across the different fundamentals of the ability to tip or edge the equipment, to rotate the equipment, and or to pressure or bend the equipment? That's basically some of the foundational skills around what we can actually do to the gear that's attached to our feet. And then of course the ability to understand it and convey it in a simple manner, and then analyze it, which and I'm sure we get into some discussions about swing analysis and everything that goes into that. It seems as though it's just as intricate within our world with how to turn a ski or a snowboard in an efficient manner. So because we don't have the audio, and I did realize that I need to share a tab to do audio, I'll just roll this video for a second. Basically this video speaks to what Angela and I have just been talking about. There's a little bit of historical aspect of skiing back in the day, but this speaks to our learning connection, the evolution of how we've developed it. This is Jeff Krill, who's the coach of our adaptive team. He's paraplegic. He's the head of the ski and snowboard school at actually the entire able-bodied snowboard school at Loon Mountain in New Hampshire.
In 2016, we redefined all of our national task forces, and we made sure that we had representation from across the country. We also leaned on our national team to kind
We're seeing some of our national team members across all the different disciplines. Talking about how we incorporated our team, which is 38 people that represent our association. It's kind of the best of the best. Every 4 years we have a tryout to pick a new team, and they act as spokespeople for the association. They also go to the international congresses and present our theories and methodologies.
In an organization that really focuses on excellence within the region, and now that we've taken the time to step back, grow from
Talking now about how all of our different regions really came together to create this new consistency, which is that collaboration and working together was able to get us to kind of crack through and create that true consistency that we've been looking for quite some time. This is Eric Rolls. He's our technical snowboard coach. Speaking about how the 3 skill sets of people, teaching, and technical, the fundamentals, are all very measurable skills, even people skills, based on behaviors, not necessarily Behaviors basically can be taught and can be worked on, and which is different than people skills and thinking of as being your personality. Your personality is kind of a set thing, but you can actually work on different behaviors in which to interact with people.
And by experts, people who inspire them to be better.
So apologize for the audio piece, but we'll move on.
We're collaborating with the students to create outcomes that they want.
So yeah, when we then took our learning connection and we had our fundamentals, we used that as the basis then to build learning outcomes. So we could articulate what are those skill sets, articulate it to everybody. And this is something that Pete and I talked about early on, was in order to apply and transfer skill sets over to university credits, we had to kind of get our house in order and be able to really truly articulate what it is that what great instruction actually means. And so when we revamped all of our standards, we built all of them on 9 learning outcomes. And it basically worked out where the first 3, based on professionalism and self-management, communication, and relationship with others, those are the people skills related learning outcomes that we actually assess through our credentialing program across all of our disciplines. On every given assessment, whether it's a skiing or riding performance or a teaching people skills assessment or a technical movement analysis assessment, there is one learning outcome on every assessment form, and it relates to professionalism and self-management, because being a consummate professional is what it's all about. I think that rings true with very similar with professional golf management and with the association. Certainly, we walked through building the learning outcomes, assess and plan, implement, and reflect and review are based in the foundations of the teaching skills fundamentals. And then we already just talked and walked through the 3 aspects of the ability to do it, the ability to analyze it, and the ability to understand it and speak to it. And through this process, we have 8 different national certification standards. We overhauled all of them. And these are about 3 to 5 years old. And one of the cool aspects of this was that all of our standards now, if you're thinking about crossing over from getting credentialed in, say, skiing, if that's your primary discipline, and you want to expand your horizons and start teaching snowboarding, when you move over into that system, everything looks and feels the same. You know where everything basically lives. There's a lot of crossover between the different disciplines. That wasn't always the case. You think about skiing and snowboarding, if you know culturally from snow sports, it's been a little bit like cats and dogs. I mean, snowboarding has been literally almost a counterculture where a lot of our snowboarders do not want to do, what the skiers are doing. And so there's still a little bit of that culturally. But within our system, we found great value in crossing over. So I'll take a breath, Angelo, and see if you want to add anything here at this point in time.
I think all I'd like to say is that just to drive it home, Dave mentioned at the beginning that we've really been trying to align nationally since 1961. You think of the width and the height of the country. It's a big place, and we've got 8 independent businesses essentially we call them regions that operate under our certification credentialing standards. So it's a heavy lift, and we're not done. If you look on the outside of that learning connection framework diagram that pops up often, there's a blue outer ring that says instructor decision behaviors and decisions. And we're in the process right now of starting to take a deep dive into that and fleshing it out. And you think about an instructor, regardless of content area, it could be a snow sports instructor, a golf pro, a classroom teacher, constant decision making. And how do you do that? And what can you rely on to make sure that you're making good ones? The one, there's the blue ring on the outside. So we still have work to do, and we're happy to have it in front of us, because we believe that what we've developed since 1961, and specifically since 2016 in conjunction with Pete, and how much he's kept us on our toes, there's still work to be done, which means we can still get better. And that's exciting. We can still be more relevant than we are now. And so it provides a sense of humility, because you realize very quickly that you're not there when you look at the framework. We haven't fleshed this big, obvious part out, but stagnation isn't good for anything in learning. So I have to suspect that once we feel like we've fleshed out that outer blue wing, it'll probably be time to circle back and start to rework the others. So it's an ongoing process, and we know that, we believe it, and we embrace it.
So our resources become very similar across. We use the Learning Connection as literally a framework for all of our manuals since about 2018. Our Teaching Snow Sports manual came out. Some of our technical manuals on the alpine and snowboard side of things are coming up on being 10 years old, and we're looking at revamping those. But the Learning Connection becomes kind of as Pete would say, the watermark behind everything that we do. What you're looking at here is kind of the evolution, the three main resources that we have. We've got our standards, our assessment forms. The language comes verbatim from their standards over the criteria, or the measurable pieces. We use a 6-point assessment scale to measure the criteria. We also then have what's known as, on the right there, a performance guide, and it takes each one of the assessment criteria, which are the measurable skill set points, and it looks at performance contributors on either side of being successful or not. And so it's the same tool that a candidate or one of our members would use to train on a day in and day out basis. But it's also the same tool as, say, Angela and I, if we were working an assessment together and we are evaluating performances in front of us, we're using the performance guide to actually validate what we're seeing. And what we're encouraging our entire education staff, which are the people that do the assessments and the examining, is to use these tools to make sure that they can validate and not just kind of go with their gut, kind of the old school way of examining, like that's it or that ain't it. It's like, well, why? You know, what do you see there that makes it not it, so to speak? And what it's done then is it's allowed us to become that much more consistent and equitable within our assessment system, because at the end of the day, the number one goal is to make sure that we have a really strong feedback loop, so our members can go back and train to the pieces where they have opportunities for growth. And so that's been a real kind of game changer for us as well. And I see Brian's hand go up, but I'll just quickly go through. This slide here really sums up our entire system, where we take the fundamentals that we've walked you through, we use that to build learning outcomes, which essentially are our national standards that define the criteria that are the measurable pieces along a 6-point scale that we use. And that 6-point scale, by the way, I saw Eric smiling and nodding as Angela was walking through Fitz and Posner motor skill development. Basically, our assessment scale is based on a modified Fitz and Posner scale, and from cognitive to early and late cognitive, all the way to early and late autonomous abilities to perform. I mentioned the performance guides, and then through this entire system, what's really cool is we've got cleaner data to build stronger metrics around change and evolving and informing future training, evolving to the changing needs of the industry and the learners within the industry. And so that's been really critical. Not too long ago, each one of our regions kind of tackled the assessment part a little bit on their own. And this whole this whole effort has allowed us to bring the country or the association that much closer together. So now we actually do assess to the same metrics, and therefore we can inform, where we're at. Brian, did you want to jump in?
I do, yeah. And I just wanted to give a little perspective to all the PGA members that are on the call. We all know as PGA members what it takes to become a PGA member. You've got the playing ability test, you have the PGA of America's 3-level education program, or if you did business school or whatever that might be. But what I think is really unique to what PSIA Aussie does is that each level of teaching certification, there's 3 separate levels. There are 3 separate in-person assessments, and those are the materials that Dave was just showing us. And what I just think about that, if we as golf instructors were required to demonstrate our skills, give golf lessons in front of a panel or assessors, right? That's one of the things that's really struck me throughout this process of learning about what these guys do, is the rigor at which their candidates are assessed is remarkable. And I know I've become friends with some folks in their industry who it took them maybe a couple of times to get through that upper echelon, the level 3, and they became significantly better instructors because of that experience. So that feedback loop, I think, is a really critical part of it. And that's just something that I've learned from them, that I just wonder if there's a way to enhance what we do in golf to make our golf instructors that much better.
Cool. Yeah, and we're excited to hear more about how you look at what makes great golf instruction, and then how do you translate that, to the learners. So I'm sure I can't see Pete right now, but I bet he's smiling because when we first met and started talking about realizing the transferability of credits, last January we were able to pull it off and start the first programming on micro credentials. We're working on our level 1. Essentially, it's consider it like almost like an internship where someone works through the World Campus online courses, but they're living and working in a ski ride town, and going through, they're actually on the hill teaching skiing and snowboarding and/or snowboarding, and they're going through our level 1 certification process. And then through that, then there's a couple of online courses, and you can start to get credits through Penn State for that. So, once upon a time when I said I was going to take a little break and go find myself in the mountains, my parents were like, great. When you're done doing that and you want to get into the real world, just let us know. And so this idea of being a ski bum or a ride bum, once upon a time, it's like, well, actually, I can be a ski instructor. I can actually be earning credits, mom and dad, and I can be working towards applying those credits, to either continuing to stay within the snow sports industry or transfer over to another career pathway, because I think there's a lot of parallels between the ability to teach and all those various skills, whether it's golf or whether it's skiing or snowboarding, and how they translate into other career pathways. And so the idea to be able to show on that resume that a level 3 certified snow sports instructor, and understand that doesn't mean ski bum, you took some time out, that actually means I have all these skills. Okay, we're getting close here, and then we can open it up and either break out if we want to, but I took a moment to put this together late last night, but we showed the goats at the beginning with Tiger and Michaela, and potentially here's the future. And I know from our association, we're trying to think about how we get the younger generation, the next generation, excited about snow sports. And I think it's probably very similar within the golf world as well. I'll just run this again. You'll channel more of a hip hop vibe for this one. because you won't hear the music? So those are both right and left cork, double cork 1260s. And this is the same person. Really, really now excited about his golf game. And has been putting about the same amount of focus and intensity that he put into his skiing, and now into working on figuring out the game of golf. So this is a Calgary final. This is right before the Beijing Olympics. And the announcer is talking about all the various tricks and the different grabs that he's doing. And it's probably just as complicated as some of your golf pros and how you can speak too technically to guests to not understand what the heck's going on. But he's 24 years old, and in 2022, right before the Beijing Olympics, he was the 6th American man. He was 12 in the world, and they took 4 to the Olympics that year. That happens to be my son, Sammy Schuling. So pretty fun, pretty cool, proud dad moment. But of course, also just I was talking to him last night, and I said, "Hey, dude, I'm presenting to the PGA tomorrow, and you know, as much as he's gotten into golf, he's like, no way, you're kidding me, really?" He was really excited to hear all about that, and I said, "Tell you what. Well, first of all," he said, "Can you get us into the Masters? Can they?" That was the first thing he said, but then I said, "You know what? Why don't you send me a couple of clips of your skiing and your golf, and we'll put something together to talk about it." But we'll wrap up with this one. This is, every year we do an annual survey with our membership, and this speaks to what are the top 3 things of why you're a member. And I think there's a lot of there's a lot of similarities between our 2 associations. But cool that education, professional development, is right there at the top of the pile there. The ability to train, teach, ski, the love of the sport, all those types of things. So I do have a couple of things from your world, that maybe we open up the conversation, but I think this slide speaks to a lot of, maybe between the laws and the principles, those are very similar to what we would call our fundamentals, potentially, but I would love to hear more from you all as well. And then this slide here, this is where the interpersonal skills and kind of that whole customer service package, and creating that, again, very similar to the Learning Connection, that spark to learning between the relationship between the professional teaching, golf pro, as well as then the students there. So take a second there, and maybe we just, Brian, what do you think? We open it up. We may or may not need to go into breakouts at this point. But
yeah, I don't think there's a need for breakouts. I think I'm already seeing one hand, so just let the questions go.
Great, cool.
Tom, go ahead.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Nice to be with you. I just wanted to relate a little experience I had that combines skiing and golf. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. 1967 was my 5th year as a golf pro, so you can get an idea of how old I am. But I'm working for Howard Kramer at the Host Farm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I'm in the shop in late September. I'm getting ready to be laid off until the following March. And in comes the hotel manager, and he tells Howard that the ski director just quit. Well, they had a 450-yard long ski hill with a rope tow. And he said, "Do you have anybody here I might be able to get to manage the ski hill?" Howard turned to me and he says, "What do you think? Can you do it?" I said, "Well, I got a little Norwegian in me, but I've never been on skis before." So I said, "Yeah, I'll try it." So I became the ski director. Never had skis on. So I go out to the snow starts to fall, and we had snowmaking equipment there. And one of the fellows, the instructors, was a student at a local college. He's from Germany. And so I met him, and we got started talking about skiing. And I managed the ski shop. We rented skis for $10. That included the use of the hill and also a half-hour ski lesson. So I asked the ski instructor, I said, "Well, what do I tell these people when they ask what's it all about with the ski?" He says, all you need to tell them is when you get out on the hill with the instructor, he's going to tell you this, and this should help. Bend the knees, $10, please. And that was it. And that ends my little escapade with golf and skiing. And that was a long time ago.
Go, Angelo. Yeah.
Thanks. I love that, Tom. It reminded me of an expression I heard, which is the world is run by those who show up.
It's a good one.
You mentioned layoff, and that when Dave pops that Penn State slide up that showcases the program through the recreation parks and tourism management at Penn State. That one, yeah. It's really interesting the way this is playing out in our area. Like what I see happening. Where I live in southwestern Pennsylvania, we're pretty much dead between Penn State and Frostburg University in Maryland. And we happen to live in some of the best whitewater territory in the country. Ohiopyle, Youghiogheny River, a lot of real high-end paddlers come out of the area and companies. And so we see an influx of folks from the Penn State RPTM program. And my wife actually is a graduate of the Frostburg program, which is a similar Parks and Rec program. And historically, those people have been able to find, supervisory and up type positions in the whitewater world with their Parks and Rec credentials. And then historically, what many of them did would during the layoff period, which is winter from the whitewater world, would get jobs in the ski industry, but they wouldn't be credentialed jobs by any stretch. They bump chairs for a winter or make snow. Some of them would teach snow sports, but what we're seeing now is an interest in earning this particular certificate so they can have credentialed winter work. And I wonder if the same would hold true for golf pros who live in temperate zones like we do. Folks who maybe do take a layoff could have a credentialed, some sort of a credential to have winter work with a little higher wage, a little better benefits, and so on and so forth. But what a beautiful opportunity for somebody to construct a career. Now, I'm Dave and I are practically the same age, and same thing, winter off. Okay, let me know when you want to get a real job. But now the possibility exists for someone, a young person, to really intentionally embrace these different programs and have credentialed type professional level work year round in a temperate zone in outdoor rec. And I just think that's huge. Thanks for reminding me of that, Tom, with your story.
Tom, that rate's gone up too. I think it's at least $50 now. I hadn't heard 10. I see Robert's hand.
Yeah, hello. My journey was the opposite. I worked at NICEF as a ski coach for about 5 years. Dave Wen was my mentor. Needed a summer job. Got into the PGA Golf Professional Program and decided my toes were too cold, and have been a PGA Golf Pro since 1990, full time. But yeah, it is a great summer, winter occupation if somebody enjoys those two things. So thanks for taking your time.
Thanks, Robert. Yeah. Thomas.
Yeah, I just just thought of another story regarding the ski industry. And this was going back even further, 1962. I'm working down in Baltimore at Pine Ridge for a guy by the name of Johnny Bass. And my girlfriend at the time was the secretary for Howard Head. Howard Head had a small business in Timonium, Maryland, where he was making head skis. And one day, I don't know, I got introduced to him, and he's a big, tall fella. I'm just tall. And so he said, boy, I've always been interested in golf. And I says, can you show me something? I said, sure, come on over. So I brought him over, and we went through about a 45-minute series. And as I was looking at him, and your reference to the cognitive and visual and cerebral aspects of our similar sports came back to me. I could tell from the look on his face that I wasn't connecting with him. He had that, boy, I can't get out of here fast enough look on his face, because there was not much physical activity involved with what I was showing him. And I just thought I'd mention that to you. And but anyhow, Howard Head gave me a pair of some of the first metal skis ever produced, and this was back in 1962.
The ski's called the Head Standard, actually.
Is that what they were called? Yeah.
Yep. Game changing.
Well, Howard Head never became a golfer,
Oh yeah.
thanks to me.
I think Thomas Gilbert, are you that hand? Yep.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say thank you guys. My history way back, I grew up in New England and was PSIA registered. So dating myself as well, but I think I started in maybe 1990 or so. And I liked the way you guys presented kind of the similarities and differences. And I think Brian really touched on, I mean, I remember it being incredibly in-depth, even just the registration. I never made it to level 1 certification, but I did teach maybe 10 years and laid off in the winter time and taught at Stratton in Vermont for 2 winters full time, and just great. But I do like the fact that there's an opportunity now at Penn State. I was not aware of that. So thanks for shedding light on it. And yeah, I love the way, I remember the clinics we used to do, every Saturday and Sunday, you could have a clinic with typically a level 3 certified instructor. And I really feel like my roots and my ability to connect with a student were created with that training way back from PSAA. So I was excited to hear what you guys had to say today, and it didn't disappoint. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. I see Jamie's got a chat comment or a question. So what are some of the differences in how you teach, train high-level amateurs and competitive skiers or snowboarders? If we think about teaching based in the fundamentals and the skills, there's a ton of similarity. The idea that, we mentioned that some of the other progression-based systems, we reference something called common threads, which are common mechanical movement patterns that work through a very beginning skier skiing in a wedge all the way through to someone who's a dynamic parallel skier carving racing. There's a separate association that works with US Ski and Snowboard. They're the whole Coaches Association. We work with them, but we are 2 different organizations. A lot of our team members actually, though, are also coaches. So we share a lot of information that way. But there are a lot of similarities and parallels with at least the foundational pieces of how to perform the sport and how they translate to the very highest levels. So that that footage of Michaela Schifrin is by far the greatest of all time. And so a lot of what she speaks to from the early days of skiing was around the hours and hours and hours of the drills and exercises and the training around foundation and mechanics that got her to where she is today. So, thanks for that question.
Sorry, I've been typing in the chat, but I know that we're going to go a bit over, and I think that's awesome. So if you're able to hang with us, feel free. And the other thing I put in the chat is if you're interested in either learning more about what these guys are doing and how they're building their education curriculum, or if this conversation has sparked any ideas on what we can learn from each other, our two industries, send me a note, and I'm happy to connect to everybody, because I think that this has been just wonderful. But I know that we've got some more hands. So let's just keep rolling.
Go for it, Peter.
Guys, real quick, obviously, thank you for your knowledge. But one of the things I sort of wrote down is, how has technology over the years changed your teaching methods and your guides and, all that you do? Because you seem like you're very in tune with, obviously, the teaching method. Is there a correlation from what you're teaching to the new technology that obviously probably changes, like in the golf industry, it changes year to year? There's always a different product. There's always a different thing. So how has that impacted what you do from a teaching method?
I lost Angelo. I just wanted to make sure do you want to take it, Angelo? I just didn't see it.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Peter. And I'm thinking, and if I'm wrong, please get me on the right track. But we just like everybody else, we encounter technological changes in gear. So, for example, in the Alpine world, 30-ish years ago, somebody decided it would be a good idea to make the side cut of the skis shaped like the turn we were trying to make, and the whole shaped ski revolution began, which, and looking back, it's like, why didn't that happen before? But that certainly changed the amount of people who had access to different types of terrain. It essentially made skiing easier. So you see an influx of people accessing terrain that maybe before they didn't. So as a teacher, you have to be equipped to deal with that. And then the other thing that popped into my head through your question was digital learning and digital technology and the whole online e-learning thing that we all got really, really good at during COVID, and here we are. And I think the short answer to both, Peter, is that we try to embrace it all. So as changes develop in equipment and gear, that's kind of a normal thing in any sport. So you adapt and accommodate. But like in terms of digital learning and whatnot, Dave and I just met yesterday because we have a couple of our technical manuals, in particular our Alpine and our snowboard technical manuals are about 10 years old. So it's time for a redress on those. And the last time we put manuals out, they were available in print and a digital package. And right now our conversation is about digital first. And I have a meeting with Penn State this week about to look into some of the options for how we might best go about that. Because I'm a lifelong educator. I was a classroom teacher for 20 years, but the digital world is sort of outside of my traditional wheelhouse. So we're going to talk to the experts and figure out how we can best incorporate digital technology into our manuals moving forward. And then, of course, like we offer online CEUs, continuing education units, for our members to keep their certifications updated. And, just as an example, I think a best use of that as we move out of COVID and hopefully get back on snow more than we were during that time. But, for example, if we have a member who gets injured, but they're due for an update on their certification, they could get that online and not miss a beat in terms of their professional development. So I'm not sure if that answers the question exactly, and I'm happy to focus on either of those aspects if that would be better, but that's what I thought when you asked the question.
No, it did. And then just as a follow-up, obviously as golf pros in the wintertime, there's not much activity on the golf course. Conversely, in the ski industry in the summertime, you're not really on the slopes. what off-season programs from a skiing perspective do you utilize? Is it more strength training? Is it, what else? So like, what are you doing in our off season? I know what we do in our off season. And is there I guess just a mesh of ideas there?
We're golfing.
Yeah, disc golfing, I'll admit. I'll put it out there. I'm a disc golfer. You can take that for what it's worth. Now that's a great question, Peter. And we have a membership of about 35,000 across the country, which is huge in terms of snow sports associations. I'm not sure how that stacks up to PGA membership, but we've got 35,000 folks in every different biome and microclimate you can imagine in this country. So we do have a very large chunk of our membership that is very, very part-time with a minimal on-snow requirement each year, up to people who ski year-round in both hemispheres. So in terms of technology and what we do in the off-season, there are a lot of dry slopes popping up as probably a few forces impacting that, probably a little bit of a monkey see, monkey do, like they have one, so we want one, but also dry slopes are going to become more of a reality as the climate changes, and related to that, if you're familiar with the big snow in the Meadowlands at the American Dream Mall in northern New Jersey, there's an indoor ski area in the States, the only one of its kind right now. It's 160 vertical feet, and they make snow, and they have groomers and a little terrain park and a beginner area. So you can, there's technology out there to ski year round indoors. But then, to the other part of your question, certainly a lot of our members will embrace other sports with similar movement patterns, road cycling, mountain biking, inline skating, a lot of the snowboarders, skateboard, longboard. So folks will find other activities to have fun, obviously, and enjoy their summer, but you can learn a lot from the movement patterns in those sports and translate them to the snow sports that we love. And yes, workout programs, we offer some on our website. We have one called ACL Strong. That's a program that our members have access to, that they can work on strengthening muscles in the leg to keep the ACLs intact during the winter. During COVID, one of our regions put out a fall fitness series that's still pretty popular with our Eastern US members. They purchase it and go through the program in the summer. So it's a lot of answers because we have a lot of people in a lot of places. But I hope that answers what you asked, Peter.
Yep, all good. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Vince, go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much for the time. My question started much like Peter's about technology. Both sports have such many different philosophies. You can go to 10 different golf professionals and you'll get a different teaching philosophy. And I'm sure that's the same way with skiing. I've been skiing about as long as I've been playing golf. But skiing, certainly the technology of the equipment has changed significantly the way I ski. I remember I was skiing 5 years ago with a friend who was PSIA, and he said, "Oh, you're doing it wrong. We don't ski that way anymore. Inside edge downhill ski." He's like, "No, you've got to, nothing moves but your knees, and you still, square the ball line." But it seems like you have to change the continuing education and the criteria for the way people teach based on the equipment changes. Is that a true statement? Because you ski on a shaped ski now, and you do that, that big carving, kind of the inside edge, the downhill ski, uphill ski is a little bit in front of that downhill ski. You're doing it wrong. You're not using the skis the way they should be used. And as golf equipment gets better, you can do the same thing, and equipment just makes you better, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Any thoughts on that? And thank you.
Well, yeah, I'll just add to what Angelo mentioned earlier, but I'm looking at this slide right here. If you look at like the laws, the six there, certainly those laws are constants as equipment has changed. over the years. And so one of our constants is our skills concept. And I mentioned it earlier, the ability to tip, turn, and bend, essentially, the equipment, or edge, or turn, and or pressure or bend in a particular manner. And so, yeah, the change from straighter skis with a longer radius side cut to then shape skis changed mechanically how you apply the ability to tip, turn, and bend the equipment. So we're not necessarily turning as much, creating as much rotational control or force. It's much more subtle, as you mentioned, in the knees or in the ankles, but it's still prevalent. It's going to be more tipping or more edging based, and we're going to back off on the rotational control. So foundationally, again, like the laws and the principles around our skills concept still apply. It's just how we apply them really is, and how we change those. We might de-emphasize things, but we're still doing very similar actions to the equipment. We're just detuning certain pieces. And then as we're getting into different types of terrain, we're also going to manipulate and change up the so-called the mixing board of those three different skills, if you will. We might, in moguls, we're going to ramp up rotation, and we're going to ramp down, edging, and we might ramp up the ability to work along the length of the ski and pressure and bend it, to work with the terrain as it undulates. Just as an example of how we might change some things. So again, maybe difference. I mean, I understand that, skiing is an open skill sport. Golf is a little bit more of a closed skill sport from what I've heard, where it is a little bit more controlled, unless you're like me, which I'm off in the, oftentimes off in the bush or the deep grass or in the trees, and it gets quite dynamic for me when I play golf in that aspect. But,
Yeah,
so.
thank you. Yeah, thank you. You use that open skill, closed skill very well, because you said that about 30 minutes ago. I started thinking, what exactly does he mean by open skill versus closed skill? But that explains it. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Eric,
Well,
go
this has
for
been
it.
a pleasure, everybody. It's been great to spend time with you all. I'm looking forward to, really kicking this off as an ongoing collaboration and learning more from you. We'd love to invite you into, some online presentations that we might be doing in the future as well. So,
Dave, can I hop in real quick? And
yeah,
Angelo, a significant portion of PGA members do teach and coach as a big part of their profession, but probably also just as significant, if not more significant, are also involved in the management or the business operation side of golf. Can you talk just a moment? I know this isn't the focus of this conversation, but how does the teaching and coaching space in snow sports interact with the business management side, particularly as it relates to your education? And the reason I asked the question is, I know within the PGA, there are a lot of members that would love to learn how to teach and coach without understanding, the food and beverage operation. And maybe that's the right call. But I know a lot of our members are wearing both hats at the same time. Is that something that you all experience, or is there kind of a different setup on the snow sports side of things?
I can speak to that, Dave. Thanks, Eric. I think this will answer your question, Eric. So we have three sets of fundamentals that we operate with, and of course the technical fundamentals are unique to the on-snow discipline, but there is much overlap because if they are truly fundamental and foundational, they're based in efficient human movement. So you'll see overlap there. But when you look at our teaching and our people skills, the language that we've been using to describe those for the past couple of years is discipline agnostic. So people skills are applicable everywhere. If they're foundational, and if we did a good job with our fundamentals, those people skills should be applicable everywhere. And same thing with teaching skills. So we also talk about transferability of our skills, and that conversation happens very often when we're talking to Pete and Brian and the Penn State folks about relevance of some of the skills that folks are learning in that Parks and Rec program, and how they might be applied in various departments within the resort setting, or if somebody leaves a resort setting, they're still relevant. So, is that what you were looking for, Eric? Yeah, we believe if we did a good job and actually wrote fundamental, and they're field tested all the time, right? At all times and all places when we're using them, we're field testing them. But yeah, if we did a good job with those, they should be relevant, whether you're teaching a ski lesson, whether you're running a housekeeping department, or you're a supervisor in a pro shop. They should be applicable, and we believe they are.
Awesome. Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here, for doing this. Clearly, there are a lot of sliders that are also PGA members, which is pretty exciting. And I invite everybody to stay engaged in this. We hope that this is just a first step in learning from each other's industries, and we appreciate your time on a Wednesday morning in season for the two of you and off season for us. So thank you, and thanks everybody for being here.
Thank
It's our
you.
pleasure. Thank you all.
Everybody.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Thanks, guys.